Thank you very much for the invitation. This paper is more about the spatial complementarities than about the structural transformation. Well, it's joint work with Rafael Serrano Quintero and Janis Steinbox. You told me I have 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
Maximum. Okay, so we are going to put together electricity and roads. What the paper tries to do is to assess the degree of complementarities that exists between these two infrastructures. To give you some data on the level of electrification in Brazil, you have here data. So I need the first valid item. So the message of this first valid item is that basically the whole Brazil is electrified. The electricity networks reach most of the Brazilian geography, right? In 2010, only 1% of locations or the population in Brazil didn't have an electricity connection, right? But what is still in process of being improved, and where spatial differences between different municipalities in Brazil come from, is the quality of the service, of this electricity service. There are still a lot of outages, frequent outages. So for example, there is a number of power outages or power interruptions in 2008 in Brazil, was 11 a year. But in some areas like the Amazonas was 93 times a year had interruptions. And the average duration of this interaction was 70 hours on average for Brazil, but 87 hours in the Amazonas. So quality is still a big problem, and the level of quality differs greatly across locations. And if you ask firms, still 46% of firms in Brazil identify electricity as a problem, as an issue in production.
Yeah. Just to understand, I mean, this is an average across regions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How many regions are you
across locations?
How many I mean, the average is across how many locations?
In Brazil, there are like 5,000 municipalities. Okay. We will not use 5,000. Huh?
Okay.
But we will aggregate.
Okay.
But yeah, we have data for, there is data for 5,500 municipalities in Brazil.
Okay.
So this is the first evidence that we use in the paper. So access is pretty much Brazil-wide, but then the quality is very different. And still they have a lot of problems in quality. Just to give you an idea, this is the duration and frequency of power outages relative to the mean. So the main problems are in the northwest of Brazil. The different skews, right? In some areas, the number of outages is relatively small, whereas in other areas, the northwest mainly, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. If we go to road, it's the same picture. By 2010, basically the whole Brazilian geography was covered by roads. So here you have a comparison between what happens in the 1980s and the road networks, let's say in the 2010s, right? So as you say in the 2010, and as you can see that in the 2010s, the network covered most of the Brazilian geography. So again, it's not an issue of coverage, it's an issue of quality. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have no idea how Brazilian population is distributed across the space.
Coast. Everybody's in the coast.
So,
yeah. This reflects population densities.
What's that?
This reflects mainly population density.
Right, meaning that it would be nice to have like on the side one map that gives us that information.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Good. So again, it's a problem of the quality of the roads. And for us, quality is going to be the speed at which you can travel. Huh? So a highway is better than a normal road. Huh? But, for example, even though the most of the territory in Brazil is covered by roads, actually still 28% of funds identify roads as an issue. It's not working? No. But this was supposed to be a map that it overlaps map with map.
Oh.
I don't know why it's not working, but anyway, it doesn't matter. In general, if you put the dots are the electricity stations and substations, and obviously the segments or the blue lines are the roads. So what you can observe, these papers are complementarities. So at least what we can observe is that the stations and the electricity station and substations more or less can move with the road network.
Sorry, but these are not any roads. These are just the big ones, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, the big ones. Yeah, there are many roads. The main ones. Huh? Okay. Well, it doesn't work the picture. I don't know why. Okay. All right. So, what are the questions that we make in this paper? What is the contribution? As we see the contribution. Right. So the main question that we are going to ask, or that we want to ask, is what are the costs of not taking into account these complementarities that may exist between transportation and electrification when you make policy decisions. Why is this important? Because usually when policymakers make decisions, they do it separately. They have a budget for roads, a budget for electricity, and they don't take into account this complementarity, right? They spend their money, and that's it. Huh? One issue that we ask is, okay, what if we let these policymakers share the budget? Would it make a difference? Would the welfare improvements be large? How does the networks change? Another question that we ask is, well, what are the macroeconomic effects of infrastructure? What is the impact of roads, electrification on macroeconomic variables? Some of them will be related to the structural transformation, that the weights of agriculture, manufacturing and services. But another variable is like the price index, the average price in the economy or others. So these are the main questions that we want to answer. The extent of complementarities and the macroeconomic effects. The contribution is that we do this analysis within a multi-sector economic geography model in which the two types of infrastructure are endogenous. So we have a government that decides where to build roads, where to build electricity, or to expand the electricity network, or improve the quality of the network. The structural transformation for us is a case study. So we choose the Brazilian structural transformation as a case study where we perform our analysis. But this is not a paper of structural transformation. It's a paper of complementarities between different types of public infrastructure. Besides focusing on this specific case and looking at complementarities, we are going to estimate the TFP effects that this type of infrastructure have, and also we can assess the optimality of the infrastructure networks. The model allows for that.
So I suppose the reason why you bring in structural transformation is because in the past 50, 60 years there's been a massive reallocation of value and workers from agriculture to manufacturing and to services, right? I mean,
well, one of the main features, right, of development is this structural transformation process. We don't observe beyond countries that are very natural resource abundant. In the other ones, we observe this process, right? That agriculture, well, just in case you are not familiar with the structural transformation, it refers to this process of the agricultural sector losing weight in the economy, the service sector gaining weight in the economy, and manufacturing following this hump shape, right?
Do you have
This is a characteristic of development. Since we think that is a good case, no?
Yeah.
Way to study this.
I'm curious to know what are the shares today. I mean, where were they coming
Okay,
from?
well, I will show you a picture.
Yeah.
All right. Here is the
Okay.
picture. All right. This is data on employment share in 3 different sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, and services. And in the horizontal axis, what you have here is the electrification rate. And this is for different years, right? Blue is 1980. Just let's focus on the extremes, right?
Okay.
Blue is 1980. Red is 2010. So what we observe, this is the distribution in space. There we have these 3,000, 5,000 municipalities all together, and as you see, depending in 1980, there were places in locations in Brazil with very high employment share, right? In some of them, close to 100%, right? As we move towards the 2000s, then this picture varies quite a lot. That the variance falls, right? So we still have locations with a lot of agriculture, but the variance is much lower than in 1980, right? And another thing is that the red, as you see, is very close to 100% of electrification. So we come back to the same message as before. It's not an issue of having access to electricity, it's an issue of having access to a good quality flow of electricity. Huh? Right? So this gives you an idea of the structural transformation in Brazil, how it has evolved. Yeah?
But sorry, what I don't really understand is the structural transformation for you is your outcome variable. You're gonna see how these complementarities play out in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay, so then in the background you're assuming that the optimal thing is to move towards a service economy. So no.
Well, we are going to do it. We are going to take the data as exogenous in terms of how the different labor shares look in a space, right? And then, yeah, what is going to happen is that richer places have more services than poorer services. But we are in that sense we are not assuming anything, right? It's something that we observe that as income levels go up, the weight of services is larger. But we don't assume anything. It just comes from the data. All right. Well, I think I'm going to skip this. This is simply correlations. Okay. What about the relation to previous literature? There are a few papers that study the impact of public infrastructure on development. Fine. Some of them look at complementarities. For example, Moneke look at complementarities in Ethiopia between roads and electricity. But then Andren Lewis look for complementarities in India. But this is mainly based on econometrics, right? So both of them find that the effect of complementarities is important. But it's a different approach, and obviously they cannot do counterfactors. So it's not exactly what we do. There are papers within the type of frameworks that we use that study public infrastructure, but all of them focus on only one type of infrastructure. Most people have focused on roads, not on electricity. So to the rest of our knowledge, our main contribution to the literature is that we study infrastructure complementarities within this type of frameworks, and we make them endogenous. We don't take we model the decision of the government. Well, some preliminary results. Well, maybe it's not. It's better that I told you as the presentation goes. Okay. All right. So let's look at the model. The model has many ingredients. We are going to consider ingredients that, in the case in Brazil, are going to be 557. It means that these 5,500 we aggregate them until we get this 557. Then we are going to consider 3 sectors, right? D is the number of sectors. It's going to be agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Then we are going to consider that consumers can move freely. There is no cost of going from Brasilia to Rio. So if your utilities is higher there, then you move. The result that we obtain would be very, very similar quantitatively, even if we move that people cannot move. So our main results is not due to the movement of people, because we have a version of the model where people cannot move it and basically same results. They supply labor inelastically. If you decide to work in Brasilia, you are going to consume everything in Brazil. You don't consume for other places. Then there is going to be a production side, and in the production side, you are going to use labor and electricity. Well, when we arrive to the production function, I will comment a little bit more on it. And then, main thing, productivity is endogenous, and depends on public infrastructure. Okay, let's start. Okay, 2 types of infrastructure. What do this type of infrastructure, or how these 2 types of infrastructure contribute to production? So roads. What is good about roads? We are going to consider 2 effects. One is that better roads allow reducing trade costs. So you can go faster and you spend less in energy. So that's one effect. The other effect that we consider is that maybe there are some TFP effects, right? If you can access a larger market, maybe you can pay for higher fixed cost. If better technologies need higher fixed costs, maybe your technology will be higher with roads, right? With better roads. And the other thing that may affect possibility TFP of having better roads is clusters, the formation of clusters. If you can connect with many other places, maybe you can end up being a cluster for a certain industry, and we know that this has TFP effects. We will estimate it, right? What about the electricity? What does electricity do for production? So you have, on the one hand, it's a production input. You need electricity to keep your machines running. And the price of this electricity is going to depend on the local supply. But then we are also considering a TFP effect of electricity. So electricity is a general purpose technology. It allows you to use a bunch of technologies. This, if you improve the technology, you go from basic irrigation to irrigation methods that need machinery that uses electricity, then you are going to become more efficient. And then this has a positive effect on TFP. Therefore, we consider the basic role of roads and electricity. Roads, you travel faster, you reduce costs, or if your roads are better, you reduce trade costs, but also TFP effects. And electricity, you use electricity to run machines, but also it may have TFP effects because it's a general purpose technology.
But Fidel, I'm
Yeah.
confused. I mean, if I compare electricity to information technology, both are general purpose technologies. But like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a fact.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a
It's a
third
fact.
revolution, right?
Yeah.
First, second revolution and third revolution. Yeah, industrial revolution.
Yeah, exactly. Now, but so I wouldn't really say that IT directly improves TFP.
No, for example, for electricity, it's piece of cake.
Okay.
Giving you an example.
Okay.
Electricity and ICT. If you have power outages and fluctuation in voltage, you cannot use ICT
Okay.
because
I see.
it burns your computer.
Okay, fair enough. So-
Every time there is
Okay.
a peak in voltage, your computer is burned.
So you're gonna say the TFP is a function of electricity because it's some kind of reduced form connection to capture this kind of
To
thing.
be able to use ICT properly, you need a stable flow of electricity,
Perfect. Okay.
right? And this is not and we are used to that, but this is not the case everywhere in the world.
Any
Right.
type of machine, it doesn't have to be IT. Like you need some stability.
Yeah. If you have electronic components, you need a stable flow of electricity. You cannot have peaks. And one of the when electricity is bad quality, you have these huge fluctuations in voltage. Okay. All right. Consumers. They receive utility from consumption of goods, and also they consume electricity. Right? Why do we have households electricity consumption? Because in these models, you need to put people all over the geography, right? So this is standard problem in a spatial urban models, right? You need agglomeration forces and dispersion forces. You don't want that everybody ends up in Rio, right? You want people also in Brasilia or in Manaus. This is a dispersion force, right? Because if more people mean more consumption and higher prices of electricity. So this, by putting their energy, we have an additional dispersion force, so that not everybody goes to Rio. Then there is this N is location, so the consumption bundle in location N depends on consumption of the different sectors, and then the consumption in one specific sector D in location N is a CS aggregate of a bunch of products produced in every single other location. So if you are familiar with trade models, this is an Arlington type model. So you import from every single location in Brazil. Well, another important component is this ETA. Well, this is amenities. So you may like a place because it offers you better theaters or nicer sightseeing. This is what we call amenities. Here we have another dispersion force, because how much you enjoy the amenities depends on an intrinsic parameter, but also it depends on labor, on population. If there are more people, then these amenities become more congested, and then your utility flow is smaller. We are going to assume that eta is negative. Theta is negative, okay? So you say this also a dispersion force. The production function. So fine with consumption. Amenities is what is also a type of variable that is introduced in this type of models to more or less match the amount of people that we find in each location, right? Because a location may not be very productive, but it has a lot of things to offer, like nice theaters or nice sightseeing, then people go there. Okay, what about production? Production in location D of product I depends on TFP. A depends on the amount of labor that you put there, and depends on the consumption of electricity. We don't have capital here. Well, we don't have capital because capital has a dynamic component, and these models don't handle well dynamic components. Right? You can manage, but at the end, in order for them to be solvable and prove that the equilibrium is unique, you have to end up having that whatever you care about the future is exogenous. Right? So in these models, most of the time you eliminate capital because it brings problems. How can we argue that this is not that important in our context? Because we have electricity. So think about these putty clay models in Atkinson and Kehoe, in which capital means consumption of energy. So if they enter with a Leontief structure, having one of them is enough. So for us, electricity is also capturing the effect of capital in a putty clay environment. Putty clay means just that there is a Leontief relationship between capital and electricity. Okay. Fine. Now TFP. Production depends on TFP. And now TFP is going to depend on infrastructure. How does it depend on infrastructure? TFP in sector D and product I depends on an intrinsic variable, a constant. And then it depends on population, depends on the quality of the electricity network, and the quality of the roads network. Quality of the road network, clusters, for example. Quality of the electricity network, a stable flow of electricity. Population, agglomeration economies. We are going to assume that the alpha, well, we will estimate it, but in general we expect that the alpha is positive, this I is positive, this mu is positive, right? That they have, yeah?
One very short question. You said before that the quality of the roads were measured by speed, and now we are seeing centrality.
Yeah, centrality, yeah.
So it's
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, because the quality of the roads that link to locations, the quality we are going to measure it by speed. But then, in terms of the quality, the effect on TFP, we are going to measure it through centrality. Okay?
And why?
Because we need, we could think of, this is a good question, right? We could think of an alternative ways of measuring. We thought that the centrality is one way, right? And there are many different ways, many different measures of centrality, right? At least 3, 4, 5. And we are going to use eigenvector centrality, right?
But also your unit of analysis is the region, right?
Huh?
Your unit of analysis is the region, right? This production. So yeah, for a region to basically shape things to other regions, you need some sort of cluster of
right. Yes.
that is very well connected.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is the quality. Yeah. The quality of roads on any given location. This is going to be related to the links that the location has, right? And then we use eigenvector centrality, which tries to assess the quality of the locations to which you are linked, right? So you may have a very good quality of road, for example, in our model. You may not have a lot of good roads, but if you are connected to a city that has very, very good roads, your quality is good. So if you are a small village very close to Barcelona, and Barcelona has excellent links, the model is going to tell you your roads are good, because maybe you only have one road that goes to Barcelona, but from Barcelona you go everywhere. So this is our measure. Eigenvector centrality.
So Fidel,
Yeah.
so you have these three forces affecting TFP, and I wonder, I mean, what is really each one of those capturing? I mean, the road, you were arguing this is clusters, but labor is agglomeration economies, which I tend to think are also clusters.
Well, it can be a consequence of, but we separate the effect of population and the effect of roads. It's true that they may be related, right?
So
Again, we come back to complementarities. Better roads might mean more people, right? Or more people may imply better roads, right? The productivity and the productivity of these people might be higher. We'll see. Yeah, everything is connected, and it's true, but we try to assess what is the impact of each of them.
I suppose I'm thinking about the challenge of separately identifying agglomeration effects and cluster effects. No? Anyway, you'll show us.
Yeah, there are. Also, I mean, I didn't mention, but this is not the best formulation to identify what we want, because somehow we are imposing complementarities, right?
Right.
You could say, why not SCS, right? And let the data tells you.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that we are working on. Because obviously that doesn't seem to be a clean way of doing things, right? This is bad economics, so, until now. And we are trying to improve it. Huh? Well, it's still under the, that's the bad thing. Econometrics have bad things, models have bad things. You know, if you don't believe the specifications, then I'm wasting your time. Right? We can do counterfactuals, but it's based on believing the specifications. Okay. All right. Fine. All right. So let me continue. Trade costs, transportation costs. This is a speed. Right? This is the quality of the road. This is the quality of a road or a bunch of roads that establish a link between location K and location J. There are going to be different roads, highways, more standard roads, paths, and we are going to compute the average speed that you can travel from K to J. That's for us a measure of quality. Then the transportation cost is going to depend on geography. This is delta. Delta is geography. Basically the slope, right? Where the slope is a steep or is flat. And then finally, transportation cost is going to depend on the path that you follow. And this indicator here tells you if what is the fastest path or the minimum cost path that links N and I, two locations N and I, right? So we use the algorithm, the fast marching algorithm that tells you where is the least cost path that you to go from N to I. Clear? So quality of the road depends on the investment of the government. Transport cost, besides the quality of the road, depends on the geography. And then it depends on what is the path. Through how many locations do you have to go? Do you need to go? Well, I'm basically done with the model. And this is the government's problem. The government's problem in this model, at the end, the equilibrium condition is that the happiness of everybody is the same. Okay? Regardless of where you live, your utility level should be the same. Your utility level at the end in a reduced form depends on, you can write it so that it depends on the infrastructure. So this capital omega depends on the quality of electricity infrastructure and the quality of roads infrastructure. So you can write utility as a function of infrastructure. And then this, the government is going to maximize, choose infrastructure to maximize utility and the free mobility. So at the end, utility should be the same everywhere. And then you impose market clearing, the standard conditions, transport costs, and the government budget constraint. Obviously, how you introduce the budget is challenging in these models. We are following other authors and assume that the amount of resources is exogenous. So you don't need to raise taxes on it. You have an amount, and you have to decide where to spend it. Exogenous, completely. Quality in the electricity network has a price, right? And each unit of quality in the road network has a price. And the sum of investment in electricity and investment in roads has to be equal to the available budget. Yeah.
So Fidel, can you explain a little bit more the utility? I mean, I understand people equalize, are equalized across regions, but why does the L, why is L raised to the power of theta? I mean, what are all those, like, and the price index is raised to the power of B? I mean, what are those? What is
remember, at the end, utility depends on, your utility is going to depend on the amenities, how nice the place is, how nice rails is, and how much money you make in rails. This is what it's telling you. L is here. L is here because this is congestion.
Okay.
The amenities, the flow of utility that you refer from congestion depends on this intrinsic variable and also how crowded rails is.
Theta was negative, right?
Yeah, theta is negative.
Okay, how about the price?
And then you have the salary, which is your income. Your income is the salary.
Okay.
So that's the.
How about the price index and the?
Yeah, this is just the price index. Okay. This is the price index of consumption, the consumption bundle.
Okay.
And this is the price index, the price of electricity. I didn't mention. Thank you. Okay. Right. So this is your income weighted by amenities divided by the price index. Right. So these are real terms. Real terms. Fine?
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the question. It's important. Alright, so this is the guidance program. Calibration. I don't. Well, yeah, I have time. Calibrating the model obviously is a lot of work. Some parameters come directly from the literature. Things like sigma. Well, first of all, I need to this consumption aggregate. I need to make no. Where's sigma? Sorry. Okay. No, where's from? Okay, fine. All right. Sorry. Here. Here you can see that this consumption, this aggregation of agriculture, manufacturing, and services is Cobb-Douglas. So you could think, okay, but you are talking about structural transformation. There is no structural transformation. This is Cobb-Douglas, which means that the wage of each sector is going to be fixed. Sure, in this model in the aggregate. Why we do that? Because it's about assumption. But unfortunately, in this type of models, if you don't have that Cobb-Douglas, you cannot prove existence of equilibrium, so you have problems. You are in big problems. So there is no structural transformation in the model. Yes, there is. Why? Because in a space, there is a structural transformation. So at the aggregate level, Brazil in this model always have the same weights of agriculture, manufacturing, and services. But in a space, the weight in each of the locations can change over time. And it's not going to be the same everywhere.
I'm also still confused about the fact that, I mean, this is a static model and then you show us data for 50 years. So
far
the fractions are going to be what exactly?
So far the analysis is only in a space. So all the data that we use for the counterfactual is going to be 2010. Because we are going to focus only about whether public infrastructure is optimal or not.
Okay.
But we are not happy with that. We need to show some results. We want to take, for example, 2005 and look at the roads and the electricity network that exists at that time. And then go to 2010 and tell, okay, how is the central planner, the government, going to change these networks? And how this influence the weight of the sectors? And is this optimal compared to the data or not? But so far we don't have that. We are still in the process of getting results. Everything that I'm going to show you today is based on 2010. It's purely a cross section. Alright, so there are some parameters that comes from directly or the literature or the data. The vitas is the exponent on labor. So if it's not labor in the model, it's electricity. So what we do is to equalize 1 minus vita to the share of energy in production that you get from the Latin American class, for example. The weights of the different sectors in consumption is just the value added share. Remember that there is no saving in this model, so everything is consumption. Well, if you want me to comment on something, I can't.
Yeah, I'm confused. I mean, say the labor share is 60 on average in developed economies. How come you get 90% for the energy, for the share of energy in production? I mean, I'm just making up.
No. This is vita. This is the share of energy in production is 1 minus vita.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
The share of energy in production in agriculture is 1 minus, it's like 8%.
So you
and it's not electricity only. So you can say, okay, but this is not electricity only. Fine.
No.
It's energy. We cannot. We have not been able to get yet only the data on electricity.
Okay.
This, for example, this parameter on congestion of the utilities. What we do is to look at data on housing, because at the end it's similar, right? You can look at congested theaters, but you can also look at congested land. If the land is more congested, then you pay more for your house. And since we have that from Allen and Arkolakis, they do the same. They have congestion and they say, okay, makes sense to look at the expenditure share in housing. That's it. It's a way. And then in terms of how road quality affects trade costs, we take an estimate from Santa Maria, which is also a paper on Brazil. No, it's in German, sorry. Okay, anyway. There are, okay, let me go. Okay, let me. Okay. Alright. Now, one problem is we have different locations. So in this case, each circle is a location. Each circle is a location. We have 557 locations. And then the blue lines are main roads, right? There are more roads but you cannot see them. Now, in principle, the the location should be nodes, right? Should be vertices where the links go. But sometimes the vertices of the roads is not the city, right? Many times Barcelona is a node with a lot of is a node, but if you go to maybe other village, you don't observe the road goes like boom boom and goes to other place, right? Something like that. There is no vertice. It's not like a hub. So we need to match localities with the road network. So there is some work there to do. Well, first of all, you need to look at where is the node in the area, right? And then we choose the city with the largest population. And if there is no cities, the village with the largest population. And then we make the match. So we end up at the end with a discretized network in which each location is, let's say, a hub, right? It's a vertex. It's a node. And it's discretized because sometimes when you link two locations, there are more than one road. Right? You can go following maybe 3 or 4 different roads. And we need to construct a matrix. And in the matrix, we can only write one number. So this number is the average speed between two locations.
Why the average and not the maximum? No, I mean...
Yeah, that's a good question. We chose the average. It could be. All right. So we match roads and nodes within each region. That's the first thing that we need to do. Then we need to calibrate investment costs. So how much improving quality of the road costs? In that we follow Collier and co-authors. So it depends on some variable that allows us to match the budget available spending roads and the budget spending in electricity. And then if the road is larger, then there is an economies of scale, and then it only depends on the slope. Right? If there is more slope, it's more costly. Geography, transport. This is transport cost. Again, transportation cost. This depends basically on the slope. You have to drive up, it's more costly than if you go flat. Then we go with electricity, and then there is also the electricity network is not the same improving the electricity network in a flat area than if the slope is large, or you have forests in the middle, or you have a lot of water everywhere. So we take into account all these geographic considerations. We follow Molly Lipcomb and co-authors to get an estimate of the cost of putting electricity. Probably this is the rest is based on previous literature. Probably this is, let's say, the more ad hoc variable that we present. This is the quality of electricity. To measure the quality of electricity, we make it a function of the average interruption duration and the interruption frequency. Right? For example, the product of these two variables, forget about the one half. If you just multiply duration and frequency, this is telling you the number of hours that a location suffers from outages, right? The number of hours that the location didn't have electricity this year. Now, why 1/2? Not a good reason. Right? Again, bad economics.
But I mean, maybe you can do something simple, no? I mean,
yeah. So far, something simple. We are open to suggestions. In the literature, in the urban economics literature, or how is operative research, right? Investigación operativa. They usually use one or the other. They use frequency or they use duration. They never put both together. because obviously the correlation is huge. But we thought that it's not a bad idea to put them together because the interpretation is straightforward. It's the number of hours you suffer from outages. That's it. We could have aggregated somewhere else in a different manner. Again, we are open to suggestions. And then the supply of electricity, we take this exogenously. So at the end, what matters is the price of electricity. Places with more supply or less consumption, then they will have lower prices. Okay, so for the supply of electricity, we look at where the electricity may come from, the supply that this hydroelectric can offer, and then the inverse of the distance, right? Because there are always small but some losses in the network. Okay. This is important. Let's see. Okay, I have some time. Now, how do we calibrate the TFPs and the amenities? The good news is that we don't need to say anything about the behavior of the gamet, right? Because you could say, okay, but you have defined the gamet's behavior in a very standard way. It's very stylized, right? Who knows whether this is the way the recovering the preferences of the gamet is very, very complicated. It's a matter of computer power, right? To be able to really extract from the variable that the gamet control the preferences of the gamet is very, very, very complicated. So far impossible. It's just a matter of computer power, right? Because you need to really do a lot of computation. It's complicated.
I mean, that's even conditional on all the structure that you.
Yeah. Recovering the preferences, right? Imagine that you don't recovering. This is not something that we say alone, right? This is something that other people like Arkolakis and all these guys have tried, and they also say the same. That is so far mission impossible. Recovering the preferences of the gamet.
But by that, I mean, just to understand, by that, what do you mean exactly? I mean, because the model is telling you
to have the exact model that reproducing what they choose. You observe
so many degrees of freedom. What do you mean by that? There's so many degrees of freedom.
So
there's infinitely many degrees.
Well,
this is
impossible.
Question, right?
Then so far it's impossible.
Yeah.
If you have infinite,
that has to be conditional on something.
Right. If you have infinite computer power, then it's yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, CS versus trash log. You put a trash log function there, not in this context, but I mean that is completely flexible, you recover everything. Right. Who knows, we could put a bunch of variables there and have enough computer power, strong computer power, and it does the job in 1 month. But it's not possible. Right?
Okay.
So we have to assume we have to do some smart thinking of how the gamet behaves, but we don't know if these are the preferences of the gamet.
I mean, in some sense, I'm not even sure you care about that. The government would do whatever it wants.
We care in terms of to argue about whether the behavior is optimal or not. Not for this. That's what I was saying. To calibrate the TFPs and the amenities, we don't need to assume anything about the behavior of the gamet. We just take what we observe in the data and recover amenities and TFPs. Right? That's the good news. We don't care about how the gamet behave. We just take the data.
Okay.
But then to say things about this drop should not be here, you assume
Right.
what the gamet is maximized. All right. How do we estimate? How do we estimate this alpha, this I, and this mu? We do simulated minimum distance, which is basically for econometricians the simulated method moment, but translated to quantitative theoretical models. The same strategy. Okay. So we estimate these parameters, which are 9, 3 for each sector, by simulating minimum of moment, or simulated minimum distance. You can think about it as simulated method of moments. So what we do, we have the TFP, we have the amenities, we have the variable chosen by the government. In terms of GR, we make draws, right? Random draws. In particular, we construct samples of 100 locations, and we do this 400 times. And for each, for this set of 100 locations, we estimate by minimum distance the parameters, and we do this 400 times and get the average, right? What do we want to match? Let's call them moments, right? We want to match 19 moments, much higher than the 9 parameters, because they say that is this is good. Which are the moments? There is no mouse, right?
Yeah, inside the. So you can open the.
There is a mouse.
There is a mouse over there.
Well, it doesn't work either. Well, it's okay. I'll do it with this. It's probably fast. Okay, these are the moments that we use. Basically, we want to reproduce the correlations between the labor shares in each of the sectors and the objects that are in the TFP, right? We try to make the moments related to the parameter that we want to observe. And then also labor shares, the distribution of the labor shares across space, right? Okay. Okay, fine. This is the last piece of the calibration. How does the model does? Relatively well. This is data versus calibrated model. If the match was perfect, it would be along the 45-degree line, all the dots. In general, they are quite close. Population, wages, electricity bill, manufacturing share. It usually overpredicts the share of agriculture and underpredicts the share of services. Why? Because this is a typical problem in structural transformation models, because we assume that the wage is the same in each location. And only if you assume that there are wage differences, that there is some wage that offers larger wages in one sector than the other, so they are not equalized, is the only way to match the labor shares. We get this even though some of our moments are related to the labor shares. But it's mission impossible if you don't allow for differences in wages within the same location. We don't. Okay. Okay. Any questions? This is the result of the this estimation of the TFP spillovers, of the TFP effects. Let me see how much time I have. 10 minutes. Okay. We estimate that the impact of population in agriculture is higher than in manufacturing and services, right? That the impact, there are some of the effects that we think can be justified. Others is more complicated. Like why population is more important in agriculture. We don't have a good story about that. What about the quality of electricity? Then that's fine. Services is the strongest effect. Again, services is the one that uses ICT probably more intensively. Like banking is the most ICT intensive sector. Why not manufacturing, which uses a lot of electricity? We believe that this is fine because what happens is that in manufacturing, the supply of electricity by the public network is not that important. Because what they do in Brazil, Costa Rica, and these countries is that they form cooperatives. And, a group of manufacturers in the same industry, they decide to build an electricity station. And they pay from their money. And they also have self-generating diesel machines, right? So for manufacturing, the problem of electricity may not be that large because of this auto production capacity that is shown in Latin America. What they do is to form a cooperative and construct a power station by themselves. So it makes sense. And then in terms of roads, the strongest spillover effect is in agriculture, which we think is also it makes sense. Why? Because usually services are in cities, manufacturing are not far from cities, and the big problem of having roads is probably for agriculture, to take the products to the market. Huh?
You can trade any of them to any locality, or
What?
you can trade any of these
Yeah.
parts to any locality?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So
For some localities it takes longer, for others
No, I
it's-
mean it's for services. Maybe there is a part of the services that you cannot trade, or
No, for us all of them are
all of them are tradable.
Yeah.
Services are tradable?
Huh?
In your model, services are tradable?
Yeah, I mean, we have, that you can say, okay, that's not very sensible, but we can show that actually most of the consumption of the services produced in one area is consumed in the surrounding area. It's probably consumed 90% closer to 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers, right? So actually the services don't go too far away, which is true also for the other goods, right? So remember that this is not a country that doesn't export services. That export services, it's a location. You probably go and shop in Barcelona, and you don't live in Barcelona, or go to the bank in Barcelona, or go to the doctor in Barcelona, right? This is a
You have data
What?
for that.
for our unit in our spatial terms. This is trade.
You have data for that.
Yeah. Okay, then we consider 3 different scenarios. We need to add another one, but we haven't done it yet. In the simplest scenario, we just let the government to choose one of the infrastructures. In this case, only electricity. And then we leave roads as they are in the data. We need to add another one, which is choosing only roads and leave electricity as in the data. Then we let the policymakers that choose electricity and policymakers that choose roads to coordinate, but they have some frictions. And the friction is that they have separate budget. So the government tells them you can only spend 1 million and you can only spend 2 million. And they cannot change the budget. This is efficiency and limited coordination. And then the third scenario is you decide together, and the budget is a shared budget. And then you decide what you want to do.
That's fully optimal, no?
Yeah, the fully optimal. The fully optimal is the problem that I showed you.
The thing that I'm struggling with, I don't know if you want to spend time on this or not, I'll let you choose, we can talk about this later. Why so far, I mean, it seems to me the baseline should be, the government is not maximizing anything, they're just doing something, and that's what we see. And then you solve the model with that, and then you see if the government was doing something different, like rational, maximizing something and taking into account all of these effects and whatnot, we could do X% better.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, but where is the baseline? You never talked
Yeah,
about
a big issue for us is what is the freaking benchmark, right? that we are still working on that. For me, the benchmark, the optimal benchmark, and this would imply recurrent the preferences of the government would be, I have a problem, a government's problem that can reproduce exactly what I observe. And there are a bunch of ingredients, right? Political, efficiency, and then I could do the type of counterfactual that you suggest. That with me would be the perfect world, right? Now, what about if you forget about voters? What about if you forget about this? What about if you add this? But this, to have a perfect benchmark, somehow you need to recover the preferences of the government.
Well,
the other possibility is that you say the benchmark is 2005. And then that's easier, and that's what we plan to do.
yeah.
And then you limit, right? If there is a road here, the quality cannot go lower than the depreciation. So you have to invest exactly that, because for us, investment is a flow, right? Roads are not stocks in our model, are flows. They give services.
Right.
So you could somehow limit the amount of investment. So starting from 2005, we could discipline the model so that is a good benchmark. That we could, and that's something that we will try to do.
Yeah,
But that's the main question, right? Because you find issues with how do I tell the story, I don't understand the benchmark, I have the same problem.
okay.
Right? But we are still generating some results.
Right.
Okay. Let me show you some of the results and then I will conclude. Maybe. So let me skip this. One important thing is this is the price index in the locations. This is the price index in each of the 557 locations. Better infrastructure reduces the prices in the economy. Right? If you have better roads, better electricity, then the prices that the economy faces are lower. And this is going to have good welfare implications, right? This is just to understand why infrastructure is good for welfare. And it's good for real income. More results, maybe, well, this is correlations between electricity, the electricity quality, and the intrinsic TFP. If you have a government that follows efficiency only, you should have a high correlation and positive, right? You invest in places with higher productivity. Well, in agriculture, it's exactly the opposite. Probably this is because you need to subsidize agriculture because you don't want that people live, right? So it looks like it doesn't have to do a lot with efficiency. This is the data. In manufacturing and services, it does, but the model says it should have a stronger correlation. So this is already telling you, no surprise, obviously, that there is a strong misallocation in public capital, right? It's probably driven by equalization policies, right? This coffee for all story. Look at this picture here. This is the optimal. This is the optimal electricity network quality chosen by the government relative to the data. More yellow means that the difference is that there is more underinvestment, that the model will tell you have to invest much more. So in general, in the areas, the more populated areas, the model tells you you probably invest too much. And in the areas that are less populated, the main cases are Manaus and Macana, you invest too little, right? These two are hubs of natural resource, the natural resource industries. So the model is telling you, in these areas you invest too little. I'm just highlighting. This is about roads. Green is you invest too little, and brown is you invest too much, right? So what this picture is telling you, okay, let's focus again in Manaus and Macana. The model is telling you, you need better roads for these areas that are important hubs for natural resources. What you have to do is to improve the connections with Brasilia, right? Increase the connections, or improve the connections with Brasilia, and once you get to Brasilia, it's done. Then you have good connections to the coast. And also it's telling you, okay, well, in terms of the Amazonia, probably you don't need to cut more trees because you have too many roads. You know, leave the trees and the forest there. You don't need to do that. Right? So it's telling you that there is the quality of the roads in most areas in the Northwest is already too much. So these are results that we get. Well, I don't want to give you here unnecessarily. Well, maybe we get some results that point out to complementarities. We generate pictures like this. This is the quality of electricity and the quality of roads. Complementarities would imply that if you have low quality of roads, then you have low quality of electricity. If you have the quality of roads is very high, then I should observe that the quality of electricity is also very high, because there are complementarities. So you want one, you want the other. In the data, you don't observe this. This is the density. This is the distribution of locations, and this is the density. Yellow means a lot of locations have this coordinate. So in the data, you observe equalization, coffee for all, right? So most of locations have a relatively high quality of both. And there is nothing here. This is black, very, very low density. This means that the government doesn't take into account these complementarities. If I follow some efficiency considerations, for example, this is the density, how it looks like. There is some positive slope here in the points, right? There are very yellow, but also red. The black area, for the whole domain, there are light colors. It tells you that the model takes into account that these complementarities, right? Okay, so let me just give you one additional result. Obviously, political considerations matter. Nobody argue against that, and we have some evidence. This is purely OLS, so a bunch of issues, right? But it gives you correlation. So what we do here is the fraction of votes that went to Lula in 2005 to the current president of Brazil, but this going back to 2005. So these are elections in 2005. The data for infrastructure 2010. So it's fine because infrastructure needs some time to be built. 5 years looks like reasonable. Then we divide in quantiles the different locations. The first quantile are the locations with the lowest support to Lula. The fourth quantile are the locations with the highest support to Lula. The quantiles are Vienna dummies, right? The fourth quantile is not here, so everything is relative to the fourth quantile. So, and then here this is the electricity investment and the roads investment. What we observe is that compared to the locations that show very strong support to Lula, the other ones had less investment in infrastructure. Less investment and significant. And these are for the different models, right? In terms of roads, for the fully optimal, there is no correlation there. But if 5 is the efficiency and coordination, where they somehow can choose, but that the budget are separate. What we think is the one that describes better Brazil, and I think many countries. Then we find the same, right? That in terms of roads, the lowest support to Lula locations receive less improvement in roads. And also the third quantile. Compared to the third quantile, more. So the more votes you give to Lula, you get a return in terms of infrastructure. Again, this is OLS, so.
But this is something about political preferences, or it highlights the importance of the regional and the federal government being aligned.
I think it supports political preferences that Lula wants to reward the voters.
But these investments are decided by
I have a picture with
the federal government or by the regional governments.
Maybe
These investments.
Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah, because federal governments in Brazil do a lot of investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of investment is carried by federal governments. Again, we have it would be great to do it for the federal government, like support for the governor of the state. But so far we have done it for Lula.
It could also be that poor regions
I
that need a
have
lot
some
of investment are the ones that vote for
I don't
Lula,
have it
no?
here, but no?
It could also be that regions that are poor and actually need investment are the ones that vote for Lula.
Could be, but again, you support, you reward these regions not because they are highly productive, but because they support the Lula. Right? Okay, so that's the conclusions. So the main contribution is looking at complementarities between public infrastructure, because this is important, right? The industry, governments and international organizations are putting a lot of money on building infrastructure, and then some preliminary results, because we still have to do a better analysis, show that this complementarity exists. So this is important, right? It's important to take it into account to allocate this huge amount of money. Then we also estimate this TFP effects. Again, it has also some caveat, because you are assuming their complementarity. We shouldn't. We are working on that. There is for sure strong evidence of misallocation. So efficiency considerations is not what drive infrastructure infrastructure investment mainly. So there should be a lot of political issues. On the last sentence would be more of the conclusion. So larger degree of coordination and budget sharing in policy making is important to increase welfare. Okay, done.